I never imagined my traditional marriage would transform into something so unconventional. For 6 years, Stephanie and I built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. Then one evening, she dropped a bombshell proposal that changed everything. She wanted us to live apart while staying married. A living apart together arrangement, she called it. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it might save our relationship. What I never expected was how her younger sister Emma would become entangled in our complicated arrangement, creating a situation none of us were prepared to handle. Before I tell you how my marriage took the strangest turn imaginable, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about relationships that do not go according to plan. My life before all this drama was pretty straightforward. At 33, I had established myself as a respected architect at one of Boston's most prestigious firms. Architecture had always been my passion since childhood, when I would spend hours constructing elaborate structures with building blocks. That dedication carried me through architecture school and into a career I genuinely loved. I met Stephanie at a friend's gallery opening 6 years ago. She stood across the room admiring a modern sculpture with such intensity that I found myself drawn to her immediately. Our conversation flowed effortlessly that night as we discovered shared interests in contemporary art, weekend hiking trips, and classic film noir. She had this infectious laugh and brilliant mind that made every moment with her stimulating. After 3 months of dating, we were practically inseparable. Stephanie worked as a marketing executive for a major tech company, and her creativity complemented my more structured thinking perfectly. We moved in together after a year, and everything just clicked. Our apartment became a blend of her vibrant decorating style and my architectural minimalism that somehow worked harmoniously. I proposed on our second anniversary during a sunrise hike in the White Mountains. The morning light caught the diamond just right as I offered her the ring, and her eyes filled with tears of joy. Planning our wedding was a collaborative process that reflected both our personalities. We were married at Stephanie's family estate in Connecticut, surrounded by 120 friends and family members. Her father, a distinguished lawyer, gave a touching speech about building a life on mutual respect. Her younger sister Emma served as maid of honor, giving a heartfelt toast about finally gaining the brother she never had. That first year of marriage was everything I had hoped for. We established comfortable routines while maintaining the spark that brought us together. Sunday mornings were reserved for brunch and crossword puzzles. Wednesdays became our designated date night, trying new restaurants across the city. We took cooking classes together and hosted dinner parties that our friends raved about for weeks afterward. We discussed having children within a few years and even started researching neighborhoods with good schools. The changes began subtly in our second year. Stephanie received a significant promotion that required more travel. Suddenly, she was flying to Chicago, San Francisco, and New York on a regular basis. At the same time, I was assigned to lead a major development project that often kept me at the office until late evening. When we were both home, Stephanie seemed distant, often scrolling through her phone while I tried to engage her in conversation. Our interactions became increasingly tense. Minor disagreements about household chores escalated into full arguments. The intimacy that once came so naturally to us became scheduled and infrequent. I started noticing how Stephanie would bristle when I asked about her day, as if my interest was an intrusion rather than genuine concern. Determined to save our marriage, I planned surprise weekend getaways. I booked us a secluded cabin in Vermont, where we used to love hiking. The weekend started promisingly, with Stephanie seeming more like her old self. But by Saturday evening, she was constantly checking emails and making excuses to take work calls. On the drive home, we sat in uncomfortable silence. After 6 more months of deterioration, I suggested couples therapy. Stephanie reluctantly agreed, and we attended 6 sessions. The therapist helped us identify communication issues, but I noticed Stephanie holding back during our sessions. She would agree to exercises but rarely follow through at home. Then came the night that changed everything. I had picked up takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and opened a bottle of wine, hoping for a relaxed evening together. Stephanie sat down at our dining table with an unusually serious expression. "Doug, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice steady. I braced myself, fearing she was about to ask for a divorce. "I have been doing a lot of research," and thinking, she continued. "I want to propose something that might help us, a living apart together arrangement." I stared at her blankly, the term completely foreign to me. Stephanie explained that LAT relationships were becoming increasingly popular among progressive couples. We would maintain our marriage and commitment but live in separate residences. According to her, this would allow us to maintain independence while preserving our relationship. We could see each other intentionally, Rather than out of obligation, she argued. It would add excitement back into our relationship. We would appreciate our time together more. My initial reaction was hurt and confusion. It felt like rejection, like I had failed somehow. Is this just a step toward divorce? I asked, trying to keep my voice from cracking. No, not at all, she insisted. It is about creating space so we can both thrive as individuals while staying committed to each other. We would still be married, still exclusive, just not living under the same roof every day. The conversation continued late into the night and resumed over the next several days. Stephanie had clearly given this extensive thought, presenting articles about successful LAT marriages and statistics on how traditional cohabitation could dampen romance. Feeling increasingly cornered, I called my longtime friend Marcus for advice. We met at a local bar where I explained the situation. It sounds like she wants the benefits of being single with the security of marriage, Marcus observed bluntly. His words stung because they articulated my unspoken fear. After a week of discussions, Stephanie finally delivered what amounted to an ultimatum: either try the LAT arrangement or accept that our marriage might not survive. Faced with potentially losing her completely, I reluctantly agreed to a 6-month trial. The process of finding my own apartment was surreal. I selected a modern 1-bedroom unit downtown close to my office. Stephanie helped me shop for furniture with an enthusiasm that hurt more than she realized. While she described the arrangement to curious friends as evolving our relationship, I felt like I was moving backward, dismantling the life we had built. When we told her parents, her mother looked concerned, while her father asked pointed questions about finances. We assured them this was a mutual decision, though I struggled to sound convincing. By the time I moved out, Stephanie seemed genuinely excited about our new chapter. She talked about how we would appreciate each other more with some distance. I wanted to believe her, so I tried to embrace this new reality, despite my reservations. Our LAT arrangement began with a structured approach. We established designated date nights twice weekly, and agreed to spend most weekends together, alternating between our 2 apartments. The first few weeks carried a strange newness. When Stephanie visited my apartment, she acted almost like we were dating again, bringing wine and dressing up more than she had in months. My new place was modern and well-designed, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But despite the trendy furniture and perfect lighting, it never felt like home. I would sit alone in the evenings, wondering if this emptiness was the independence Stephanie had been seeking. Meanwhile, Stephanie flourished. Her social media accounts filled with posts about our evolved relationship. She wrote long captions about how couples should normalize giving each other space and independence. Friends commented with admiration about how progressive we were, while I wondered if any of them could see through the facade. 3 weeks after our separation, we attended dinner with our married friends James and Kara. The inevitable questions came up. So wait, you are still married, but living separately? By choice, James asked, his confusion evident. It is actually more common than you would think, Stephanie explained, launching into statistics about modern relationships. I noticed Kara giving me sympathetic glances throughout dinner. When Stephanie went to the restroom, she leaned over and whispered, "Are you really okay with this?" I offered a non-committal shrug, unwilling to admit even to myself how much I was struggling. The first real test came at a family dinner at Stephanie's parents' house. Her mother Barbara maintained a polite but strained smile as Stephanie explained our arrangement. Her father Harold made little attempt to hide his disapproval. In my day, marriage meant building a life together, not apart, he commented dryly. That evening also marked my first meeting with Emma since our new arrangement began. Stephanie's younger sister had recently moved back to Boston after finalizing her divorce from her husband of 3 years. At 28, Emma resembled Stephanie physically with the same dark hair and expressive eyes, but her personality was noticeably different, more reserved and thoughtful, where Stephanie was bold and decisive. "So you two are still together, just not living together?" Emma asked during dinner, her tone suggesting she found the concept strange. "Exactly," Stephanie answered cheerfully. "We see each other intentionally now, not out of habit." I caught Emma's skeptical glance, but said nothing. As the weeks passed, I found myself increasingly dissatisfied with our arrangement. Date nights that were initially sacred began to be rescheduled or canceled due to Stephanie's work commitments. Our weekend visits became shorter, as she developed plans with friends or colleagues that somehow could not include me. 3 months into our LAT marriage, I ran into Paul, a mutual friend, at a local coffee shop. "Hey man, good to see you," he said. "I was surprised Stephanie came to the concert alone last night. She mentioned you were busy with work." I froze. Stephanie had told me she was working late on an urgent project, which was why she canceled our date night. Yeah, deadlines, you know how it is, I replied, feeling a heaviness in my chest. The holiday season brought new tensions. At Thanksgiving dinner with Stephanie's extended family, I fielded uncomfortable questions about our living situation. Most relatives seemed confused or concerned, though they tried to be supportive. Emma, now a more regular presence at family gatherings, observed these interactions with quiet interest. After dinner, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Emma as I helped with dishes. "How are you really doing with all this, Doug?" she asked softly. Something about her genuine concern broke through my practiced responses. "Honestly, I miss the life we had," I admitted. "But Stephanie seems happier this way." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes I wonder if happiness that comes at someone else's expense is really sustainable." 2 weeks later, I ran into Emma at a local coffee shop. What began as a casual hello turned into a 2-hour conversation. She opened up about her own failed marriage, how her ex-husband had gradually pulled away emotionally until they were essentially strangers sharing a home. "The irony is that Stephanie criticized me for not fighting harder to save my marriage," Emma said with a sad smile. Yet here she is, creating distance in hers. This chance meeting turned into occasional texts. Emma would send me articles about architecture that reminded her of me, or I would recommend books based on discussions we had. Our communications were always appropriate, focused on mutual interests and family updates. When I tried discussing my growing dissatisfaction with Stephanie, her responses became increasingly defensive. "You are not embracing the freedom this gives us," she insisted during one tense conversation. "Maybe you are too traditional to appreciate what we are building." During a family Christmas gathering, I noticed Stephanie's parents watching us with concern. Emma approached me while Stephanie was busy showing her new work portfolio to an aunt. "She mentions your arrangement to everyone like it is something to be proud of," Emma whispered. "But she never talks about how you feel about it." I shrugged. I am not sure she knows how I feel anymore, or if she wants to know. 4 months into our arrangement, I mustered the courage to suggest we reassess the situation. Stephanie immediately became agitated. "We agreed to 6 months," she reminded me firmly. "You need to give it a fair chance before making judgments." What struck me most was the realization that I now shared more honest conversations with Emma than with my own wife. Our text exchanges had increased in frequency, discussing everything from current events to family dynamics. She understood my discomfort with the LAT arrangement, without my having to explain it repeatedly. At our 5th monthly anniversary dinner, I noticed Stephanie checking her phone repeatedly. "Important work email?" I asked. "Just confirming plans for tomorrow," she replied vaguely. The next day, I learned from her cousin that Stephanie had attended a wine tasting event with colleagues, something she had never mentioned to me. I felt a growing sense that our separate lives were becoming exactly that, separate, with fewer points of intersection each week. 6 months into our LAT arrangement, I sat alone in my apartment on a Friday night, a date night Stephanie had canceled last minute. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Having dinner alone at Salvatore's. Saw your Instagram post about being stood up. Want to join strictly as family, of course." After a brief hesitation, I accepted. Finding Emma at a corner table, I was struck by how comfortable I felt in her presence, compared to the walking on eggshells feeling I now experienced with Stephanie. "Another work emergency?" Emma asked sympathetically as I sat down. "Apparently. 3rd one this month," I replied, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. As we shared a meal, our conversation flowed effortlessly from books to travel to childhood memories. Emma recalled how she had envied Stephanie's perfect life, perfect career, perfect husband. "The irony is that she seems determined to dismantle that perfect life piece by piece," Emma observed, then immediately looked apologetic. "Sorry, that was out of line." "No, it is an observation I have had myself," I admitted. The following weekend, Emma called asking if I could help her move some furniture into her new apartment. Stephanie was away at a marketing conference, and I welcomed the distraction. What should have been a 2-hour job turned into an afternoon of arranging and rearranging furniture, hanging artwork, and ordering takeout when we realized how late it had gotten. "I really appreciate the help," Emma said as we collapsed onto her couch. "It already feels more like home." "That is what I miss most," I confessed. "Having a real home, not just a place to stay." Our text exchanges became daily occurrences. Emma would send morning messages about interesting news articles or evening texts about family gossip. I found myself looking forward to her name appearing on my phone screen. After 6 months of our LAT arrangement, I finally confronted Stephanie about my concerns. We met at a neutral restaurant, and I carefully explained how disconnected I felt from our marriage. I feel like we are drifting further apart, not growing individually like you suggested we would, I told her. Stephanie sighed with obvious frustration. You are not trying hard enough, Doug. You are still clinging to traditional expectations instead of embracing what we could be. The conversation ended with her suggesting I needed to evolve my thinking about relationships. Nothing was resolved. A week later, Stephanie called to cancel our planned vacation to California, citing an opportunity to present at a marketing conference in Chicago. I found myself with a week of scheduled vacation time and nowhere to go. Emma called that evening after hearing from Stephanie about the canceled trip. That is really disappointing. You had been looking forward to that getaway for months. During our conversation, she mentioned that she needed a +1 for a friend's wedding that weekend. No pressure, but since you are suddenly free, it would save me from being seated at the sad singles table. The wedding reception was elegant, but low-key. Several guests assumed Emma and I were a couple, leading to some awkward corrections. During a slow dance that Emma insisted was just to avoid her ex-boyfriend who was hovering nearby, I became acutely aware of how natural it felt to be with her. As we swayed to the music, Emma looked up at me with an expression I had not seen before. There was a moment of tension, a silent acknowledgement of something shifting between us. We both stepped back simultaneously. Later that evening, as I drove her home, Emma was unusually quiet. Outside her apartment, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. I need to tell you something, and it might ruin everything, she said, her voice trembling. I am developing feelings for you, Doug, and I hate myself for it. You are my sister's husband, and I would never act on these feelings. But I cannot keep pretending they do not exist. The confession hung in the air between us. I felt a complicated mix of emotions recognition among them. Emma, I value our friendship too much to risk misunderstandings, I finally said. I respect you for your honesty, but we both know this is a line we cannot cross. I am still married, regardless of how complicated that marriage has become. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know. I just needed to be honest with you. I will give you space. The next day, I requested an urgent meeting with Stephanie. This time, I was determined to have a real conversation about our failing arrangement. We need to talk about where this marriage is going. I insisted when we met at a cafe. This arrangement is not working for me. I feel more disconnected than ever. Stephanie seemed distracted and dismissive. You are overreacting. Many couples find that LAT arrangements take time to adjust to. Frustrated by her response, I decided to visit her apartment, unannounced the following evening, hoping to force a meaningful conversation. Using the key I still had, I entered to find evidence that suggested I was not the only visitor she had been entertaining. An unfamiliar jacket hung by the door, and 2 empty wine glasses sat on the coffee table. When Stephanie returned home 20 minutes later, her shock at seeing me was immediate. Doug, what are you doing here? We agreed to respect each other's space. I think we need to be honest about what this arrangement has really been about, I said quietly. Are you seeing other people, Stephanie? Her hesitation told me everything. The LAT arrangement allows us both to grow individually, she began carefully. Part of that might involve exploring other connections. The revelation, while not entirely surprising given recent events, still felt like a physical blow. That was never part of our agreement. We said we were still exclusive, still committed to each other. Relationships evolve, Doug. You cannot expect things to stay fixed in some traditional framework forever. I spent the next week in a haze of anger and grief, ignoring calls from both Stephanie and Emma. I took time off work, shut down my social media, and simply processed the implosion of my marriage. On the 8th day, Emma left a container of homemade soup outside my door with a note, not trying to intrude. Just wanted to make sure you are eating. No need to respond. The simple act of kindness broke through my isolation. I texted a brief thank you, making it clear I needed space, but appreciated her concern. She responded with understanding and distance. After 2 weeks of minimal contact, Stephanie suddenly appeared at my apartment door. I have been thinking about us, she said without preamble. Maybe we should reconsider the LAT arrangement. We could try living together again. I invited her, and noticing how she surveyed the changes I had made. The new artwork, rearranged furniture, and personal touches that reflected my evolving tastes rather than our shared aesthetic. What brought this on, I asked, genuinely curious. Stephanie hesitated. I just think we might have rushed into this arrangement without fully considering all aspects. As she spoke, I noticed her eyes lingering on a book Emma had loaned me, visible on my coffee table. Her questions gradually shifted toward my activities during our time apart, with particular interest in family gatherings and whether I had seen Emma recently. The realization hit me with startling clarity. Stephanie's renewed interest coincided precisely with her awareness of my friendship with Emma. She had not reconsidered our arrangement because she missed our marriage. She had grown uncomfortable with the unexpected consequences of the separation she had orchestrated. "Stephanie," I said carefully, "I need to be honest about where I am emotionally. This arrangement fundamentally changed how I view our relationship. You created distance between us, and now I am not sure that gap can be bridged." Her expression shifted from confident to concerned. "Are you saying you want a divorce?" "I am saying that the foundation of trust and commitment I believed in has been damaged. You admitted to exploring other connections while we were supposedly working on our marriage." Over the next hour, we had perhaps the most honest conversation of our entire relationship. Stephanie finally admitted she had proposed the LAT arrangement without fully considering the potential consequences. She had been intrigued by the concept, but unprepared for how it would transform our relationship dynamics. And yes, she finally confessed seeing you and Emma become close triggered feelings I was not expecting. "Is that why you suddenly want to reverse course? Because you are jealous?" She looked away. "Partly, but also because I realized I might lose you completely." "I think we already lost each other," I said gently. "The moment you decided our marriage was flexible enough to include seeing other people, something fundamental broke." After several more difficult conversations, we agreed to begin divorce proceedings. We would attempt to keep the process amicable and fair, acknowledging that our relationship had evolved beyond repair. Telling her family was one of the hardest parts. At a tense dinner, we announced our decision together. Her father looked unsurprised while her mother was tearful but supportive. Emma maintained a careful neutrality throughout the evening, barely making eye contact with either of us. In the weeks that followed, I focused intensely on rebuilding my life. I found a therapist who specialized in relationship transitions. I recommitted to my architectural work, taking on challenging new projects that stretched my creative abilities. I established new routines centered around personal growth, joining a rock climbing gym and taking cooking classes. I maintained minimal contact with both Stephanie and Emma during this period, needing space to process my emotions and establish my independent identity. 6 months later, with the divorce nearly finalized, I encountered Emma at a local bookstore. We both froze momentarily before she approached with a hesitant smile. "How have you been?" she asked, genuine concern in her voice. We moved to the bookstore cafe, where I learned she had deliberately kept her distance out of respect for the complicated family dynamics. "I never wanted to be the reason for additional tension," she explained, "and I needed to be sure my feelings were not just a reaction to your situation with Stephanie." We talked openly about the boundaries and complications that existed between us. I explained that regardless of my feelings, I could not consider any relationship until my divorce was finalized, and I had fully processed that chapter of my life. "Some things need the right timing to have any chance of success," I told her, "and jumping from one relationship to another, especially within a family, would be unfair to everyone involved." Emma nodded in understanding. "I respect that. I have done a lot of thinking, too, about what I really want and what would be healthy for all of us." That conversation marked the beginning of a cautious new phase. We agreed to maintain a friendship with clear boundaries, allowing time and distance to clarify our true feelings. Over the following months, I came to several profound realizations about relationships. I understood that compatibility extends beyond shared interests to fundamental values about commitment and growth. I learned that my traditional views on marriage were not outdated, but simply my authentic preference deserving of respect. Most importantly, I recognized that relationships require equal investment in a shared vision, not just compromise. A year after Stephanie first proposed our LAT arrangement, I found myself in a very different place than I could have imagined. The divorce was finalized, bringing both sadness and relief. I had established a comfortable new normal in my apartment, which finally felt like home. My career had advanced significantly due to my renewed focus and energy. As for Emma and me, we had begun carefully exploring a deeper connection after ensuring enough time had passed to honor all the complicated emotions involved. Stephanie had initially struggled with the development, but gradually came to accept it as we all worked to maintain respectful family dynamics. Looking back, I realized that sometimes relationships end for reasons we cannot fully control. What matters is how we respond to that ending, the lessons we extract from the pain, and the boundaries we establish for our future happiness. Have you ever been in a relationship where you wanted fundamentally different things than your partner? Share your experience in the comments below. I would love to hear how you navigated that challenge and what you learned from it. If this story resonated with you, Please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life relationship insights. Do not forget to share this video with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes what feels like an ending is actually making space for a more authentic beginning.